It's very important to remember when somebody's not feeling very well to think about how you're going to manage their bladder and bowels. This might be something you want to talk through with a district nurse or GP. There are products available and things there that can help you. You could borrow or buy bedpans or urinals, or you could use alternative methods, which I'm going to talk about now in more detail. The main thing to remember is that even though someone's not eating and drinking, they do need to still keep having their bowels open regularly. So you must remember to take any prescribed medication that you've been given, such as liquids or tablets, for regulating their bowels, because actually if people become constipated, that can make them very uncomfortable, particularly towards the end of life. The other option for managing bowels and urine when people can't get out of bed is to use pads and padding. You can get simple things like pants that are disposable. They're quite easy to put on if a person is mobile, but if someone's confined to bed and you're looking after them on your own, that can be quite difficult. An alternative to that may be using something like this all-in-one pad system. This actually has a band that goes around the waist. It enables you to put this on very easily whilst the patient is still in bed. Another alternative is to use just an ordinary pad, but you do need to make sure that you wear pants with them, because it's important that the air doesn't become in contact with any urine, because that's actually what causes the skin to break down and sores to develop. As a last resort, using flat sheets such as this on a bed may be helpful, but you do run the risk of air becoming in contact with the urine, so there is a higher risk of someone developing a pressure sore when you're using this type of product. You could ask your district nurse for advice on any of these products if you want to talk through that further. There's obviously the availability of bedpans and urinals. Again, speak with your district nurse about those if you think that might be an option. Some men prefer to actually use something like a sheath, known as a conving. This is a piece of equipment that fits over the end of the penis, a little bit like a condom. And these are readily available from the district nurse. They literally just sit over the end, and then using a catheter bag, that then fits into there, and the urine is drained and collected in a leg bag, and that makes managing men's incontinence much easier. A more permanent solution might be the use of a catheter. These can be used by men or ladies, and it's a small tube that's passed up through the waterworks, and that actually then allows urine to drain down the tube, and we use the leg bag which we then connect to the tubing, and that again allows the urine to drain down into the bag. Either of these products you would need to discuss with your district nurse first, but they are options. Some people do find this an area of care that they find embarrassing and difficult to talk about, but please don't worry about that. Most health professionals are quite used to discussing this sort of care, and it does actually make the difference between somebody being comfortable or not. So please go ahead and ask either your nurse or your GP for more information and advice.
Hello, my name's Chris. I'm a GP and a hospice doctor, and I'm here to talk about the things that might happen to somebody as they become more unwell, as they enter the final stage of their illness. It's often a time that's characterised by great uncertainty and worry for both carer and patient. Hopefully I can provide a few general pointers to how things may be. People are very individual in death as much as they're individual in life, so there are only general pointers really, but hopefully these can provide some help and reassurance. I think the first thing to note is that things can be divided up into two phases. The first phase is where somebody becomes probably much weaker. We find that people take to their bed may very well spend most or all of their time in their bed. The thing is to allow somebody to do this and not to feel that there's anything else that one should be doing. If somebody wishes to stay in bed, then I think it's fine. and we should allow that and go with it. As people become more poorly, we often find they have less of an appetite and they have less of a wish to eat and drink as they did when they were well. This is a natural part of the dying process, and often relatives are very anxious about this. I think it's not such a priority at this time. I think it's much more important that we just concentrate on those things that make somebody much more comfortable, more relaxed and more peaceful. Often as people become more poorly, we find that they tend to withdraw from the outside world. We often find that they sleep much more and are perhaps not as communicative as they have been. This is just a natural process of dying. Just as one's body shuts down, one's mind also shuts down. And this is just a natural reaction to the dying process. It isn't anything that a carer has done or anything that the carer needs to be concerned about that they might do. I think just loving and gentle support will be of great help.
As someone comes towards the end of their lives, it may be that they're not able to take their tablets anymore. In order to make sure they remain comfortable, it might be suggested by a health professional that a syringe driver is being used. A lot of people are worried about this, so I thought I'd just share a few things with you. I've got one here to show you. It's basically a machine that drives a syringe and encourages the fluid to go down over a 24-hour period through into a needle that's placed under the surface of the skin very gently, either in the arm, the leg or the tummy. The fluid in the machine actually contains all the medication that would be required to try and keep that person comfortable. That might be that it has painkillers, anti-sickness, and sometimes a relaxant just to keep that person comfortable. Sometimes we can add in a drug that will help to dry up secretions in the chest. There may be times when you actually need to have medication given on a more regular or frequent basis, and that can be done using something called a butterfly. That's a little needle that sits under the surface of the skin very gently and remains in situ. And then what we can do then is put any additional medication through this little bung at the end. That's much more comfortable for the person and it saves them having to have lots of injections.
People are often more worried at night. Everything always seems to look worse in the dark, but again there's lots of help and support available even at this time. There's the out-of-hours GP service, there's your district nurse, but also in many places there's a hospice advice line. We have a 24-hour advice line and people can ring up at any time that they wish. Even at 3 o'clock in the morning we're happy to take anybody's call. And it may just be enough to reassure you and provide the advice and help that you need. This can be the hardest time of all for a carer. In many ways, the longest journey for the patient has already happened. As people enter the final hours of their lives, often we find that they're very deeply asleep and no longer rousable. For them, time will no longer be an issue. The time that they have left will go in the twinkling of an eye. But often I think for carers it can be a very difficult time, and time can seem very, very slow. It's at this time we really need to make sure that we're providing support and help and care. I think still at this time you can hold and touch and talk, even play a favourite piece of music, and I think that will provide great help and reassurance. We think that somebody's sense of hearing is the last thing that goes really, and certainly as carers talk to their loved one, it seems to keep them calm and rested and peaceful.
As Chris has said, there is always somebody available 24 hours a day, so it is important that you keep those telephone numbers to hand, particularly when that individual is entering the final phase of life. After the person has died, you will need to ring and let the health professionals know that this has happened. They can then advise you on what needs to happen next. In most cases, what happens next is something called last offices. This is where the person is prepared for their funeral. It usually involves washing the body and putting on clothing that may have been chosen before that person died. You may also like to apply makeup or jewellery as well, if that's a wish. Sometimes it's an opportunity to include spiritual and religious aspects and rituals, if again that's something that was chosen to be done. Last offices can be performed by yourself, by other health professionals, by the funeral directors. It's really personal choice. This film is only a guide, and we hope that it answers some of your questions. However, if there are things that you want to talk about further, there are lots of people around that are prepared to listen. You can find information and contact numbers within the pack that accompanies this DVD.